So if you don't wish to appear on camera, turn your camera off. If you're happy to, then obviously leave your camera on. The majority of the screen is taken up by the slides anyway. But Caroline and Ali are here now, so we'll start to kick off. So Jez, if you can start recording, which I see you have, we'll just quickly go through this. Okay. So firstly, welcome to the first show and tell of 2022, our show and tell 19 of this current phase of the contract. We always, at the beginning of all these show and tells, we reiterate what our kind of overarching vision is for these, and our vision for the website, the new website that we're building for our residents. We will give our residents more free time by making everything they do with the council faster and easier. That's the number one thing that underpins everything. So everything that we do is aimed at doing that. What we've done in the last, you'll see I've got 2, 3, 4 weeks, because we would have had a show and tell just before Christmas, and then everybody left for Christmas. We haven't had that much activity in between. Some people have been working, some people haven't, but anyway, lots of things going on, which we'll talk about. The first one of which we're going to talk about is waste and recycling, which I believe Caroline is going to talk to us about.
Okay, thank you very much, Peter. Okay, if we move to the first slide, there we go. So I'm just going to talk about what we've been doing with the waste content. We've been looking at user testing the information architecture, which is how we structure the content and how we label the content as well. So we tested 3 different versions. One of them was the current structure. And then we tested 2 alternatives as well, which I've listed, and I'll go into more detail on this slide. And the primary objective for this test was to understand which version helped users to quickly and easily find the waste and recycling information on the Buckinghamshire websites. So with the current version, so the picture on your left here is what we've currently got on the Buckinghamshire Council website. And how it's structured is that you've got your 3 tiles at the top, which are related to the 3 top tasks that users want to do when they go to the waste content area of the site, alongside lots of other tasks below. And with the current information architecture, there is all of the tasks listed out on the page. So with the alternative version, in version 1 and 2, we tried to reduce the number of links below the tiles to prevent overwhelming users. So in version 1, the first thing you'll notice is that we've changed the title to waste and recycling. And we also changed the descriptions in the top 3 tiles to see if that terminology resonated with users better. And we reduced the number of links by grouping certain tasks, which we grouped them by theme. So one of the themes were all bin collections, which if you look very closely, you can see that at the first link under the tiles. So all links, all tasks related to bin collections we grouped under there. And we also grouped street cleaning. And then version 3, we grouped everything. So you can see the top 3 tiles. They were grouped by all of the bin collection data, all the recycling, and all the street cleaning, with a few key tasks listed underneath. So that's an even more reduced version. So if we move over to the next slide. So in terms of which one performed better, the newer version performed the best, but you can see all 3 versions tested quite well, all above average. But in terms of what changes we will make, and that they were based on the secondary objectives. So we move over to the next slide for me. So the secondary objectives were users able to complete their tasks and find certain things quickly and easily. So for example, we had questions such as, do you understand the term street cleaning? So when we gave them a street cleaning task, such as if they observe someone illegally dumping waste, what would they do? Where would they go to report it? We observe which path users took. And on the right-hand side, we can see those blobs of red and other colours, which it shows exactly where people were clicking on the website. So we could see exactly what path they were taking. Other questions were, where do users go when they need to find out what they can and cannot recycle, which is a really popular task. And what would users do if their bin wasn't collected? So these were the types of secondary objectives that we collected based on the user needs research. And the answers to those questions are the things we're going to change in terms of the results of this test. So if we move over to the next slide. So this is a quick scan of results. So one of the things we asked about was which device they tend to use. They tend to use desktop computers. So this is really important. So when we're designing pages and when we're testing pages as well, it's good to know that that's the most popular device when they're looking for waste content on the Buckinghamshire website. The most common route to access waste content was via the quick links on the homepage. So just under the waste title, we have the quick links underneath. And also the second most common route was clicking on the index page. The grouping of the street cleaning tasks tested really well with users. Grouping the recycling centre and opening hours and waste permits tested well, which is good, so we can reduce the number of those links on the index page. There were other things we found, such as users struggled with the term contaminated bins, and it got confused with hazardous waste. And also users struggled with the term bulky waste as well. So that could be an area that we potentially test in following user tests after this one. So if anyone would like to see the full report of results, please do get in touch. We're more than happy to share them with you. If you move over to the next slide for me. In terms of next steps, the content team are now going to analyse the results and the recommendations. So the slides on the right-hand side, each of these are recommendations based on each individual task, and there were 20 individual tasks in this test. So the content designers will be making relevant changes based on the recommendations. We'll be presenting these findings to the waste team. Obviously, we'll review any content changes, making amendments to draft content, and then we'll understand it to see if there's any further user research that will be required. So that's where we are with the waste. Over to Dominic, I believe.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Quite impressive to see in the recycling where you've got current IA 36%, new IA 95%. That's quite a specific task, I suspect, but it's a real uplift, that's for sure. Okay, so next up is the Rebs and Bends portal go live. So I'm going to hand over to Dominic now to talk a little bit about the new Rebs and Bends portal.
Oh, thanks, Pete. So we've been working on the Revs and Bends. This is a new portal. As part of the build-up work to that, we had to kind of review all the content. So the content included like business rates, housing benefits, and council tax. So we did a refresh of all that content. That went live in August last year in preparation for the portal going live. The portal basically is another website, and it has all the sort of Revs and Bends forms on it. And the nice thing about it is it links to a database. So when somebody completes a form, it goes to the back office system. It's all contained. It's easy for the team to access, and they don't have to worry about PDF documents and Word documents. At the moment, this is only available for Aylesbury and Wickham residents. That was purely down to the providers they chose. We use those already with Aylesbury and Wickham, and it was easy to reconcile all the figures and get it working, whereas the other two use a different system, and it was a bit more complicated. So Chiltern and South Bucks residents will have to sort of wait until September 2022. But what it allowed us to do was delete a lot of content from the legacy sites, which is really good, and consolidate it all on the main council website. So next slide, please. So the Revs and Bends portal, it's been branded up. We use all the sort of the colours from the main website. All the functionality is there. There are some little quirky things you can see on the sort of screenshot, like where it says next, it's all in caps. We kind of wanted to change that because it looks a bit shouty and it's not great for accessibility, but there's only so much we can access on the system and change. So as I mentioned, all the forms are linking to the database, which is good. The teams can sort of find it quickly. Because we're working with a third-party supplier, sometimes it's just a little bit trickier for them to move quickly if you find things that you want to change. And we found that on the branding, there were some things that we didn't have full access to amend. And some of the content areas as well, it was difficult to kind of change things because the editor we used was a bit basic. And then going forward, they use Google Analytics. So because it's gone live, we need to sort of keep a check on, are the forms being used? Are people finding things? And is it working for customers? So next slide, please. One of the big sort of things with any new system going live is, are we going to get a lot more traffic? Are we going to get a lot more customers hitting it? And how will it impact? So we looked at the main council website, and then we use a postcode lookup. So when a customer perhaps goes on, pay a direct debit, they have to go to the postcode lookup, type in their details, and then it redirects them to the relevant content. So it's another area that we just need to look at and just double check that it would cope with that traffic. And then the third part is the portal, which is the image at the bottom, and we just wanted to make sure that customers could use that and it wouldn't be overwhelmed. Because it went live in December, not a lot of people were perhaps looking at their council tax bills and doing that. They're probably more interested in chocolates and gearing up for Christmas. So it was low traffic and low impact to the service. So it kind of was a quiet launch. And looking at the big date is kind of March 2022. This is the council tax billing. So when we get close to that, we'll have to look again at just double checking that it can cope with that bigger wave of traffic. So that's me, and I think it's Ali next.
Great, thank you. Yep, I'll just give you a quick update on the roads and infrastructure projects. So these projects sit within parking, roads and transport, and the content on the site is really just there to update residents on what's going on in their local area. So the three main aims that we had for this piece of work was to create a template and a consistent approach for all roads and infrastructure projects. We wanted to ensure that the projects were easy to find and that they were named in a consistent manner. So this would help residents. And then we also wanted to ensure that the content was easy to manage and keep up to date. So this was just more for the service area. So if we go over to the next slide. So to start this work, we met with the service area and we kind of took a lean approach and we defined all of the user needs. So what were the residents coming to do on these pages? We also understood the kind of requirements of what needed to be published. So some of that included the location of the work, so who was funding the projects, and any kind of in detail PDFs that kind of went into further detail of the project. And we also understood in more detail the process of updating and publishing the content. So from this, if you go over to the next slide, we mocked up kind of a couple of different approaches for how we could organise the projects on the website. So we've come up with two different options. So the first one is looking at grouping the projects around kind of phase. So projects that are proposed, so that means that residents can have a say and they can consult on the projects that are in progress, and then also projects that are completed. So that's kind of one option, and then we have another option looking at grouping projects around area. So that'd be independent of phase, so that might mean that it would need less updating for the service area, but it would also still be easy for local residents to find their content quickly. And we also created a couple of templates for the kind of projects and looking at how to structure that. So the next steps is really going to be sharing those with the service areas to kind of get any feedback and then iterate that before we kind of then migrate the rest of the content over. But that's me. I'm going to pass over to Oscar.
Hi everyone. So I've been working on the road safety content over the last couple of weeks. It was quite a simple one in that all of the content was together on BuckCC already. So we went for kind of a lift and shift kind of approach on this one. But I did manage to make some other improvements to it as well, other than just kind of improving the text and making it web suitable. So one of those, I pulled out the tasks. So previously for managing speed, we had quite a long inline index. So it's hard to find kind of what action you could take specifically to deal with speeding in your area. But we've managed to pull out the tasks. give them kind of individual pages so they have a bit of focus for those. Next slide, please. We also managed to centralize all the courses and assessments in one place. So users have kind of a one-stop shop for training and kind of stuff that could improve their driving and awareness. Next slide, please. We also renamed some of the pages so that the titles were a little bit clearer. Some of the terms in there might not have been kind of known to the average user. So we kind of just took them down a level and made them understandable for everyone. So vehicle activated signs became request an electronic road sign. And we made kind of slight improvements to titling like that to make it a little bit easier for people to find stuff. I think that's all from me. On to Laura.
Laura, do we have you on the call? I'm not sure that we do. Laura may have been one of those people who have dropped off this. I'm happy to take this unless anybody particularly wants to take it. Okay, so we're going to talk to you a little bit about a design system that we pulled together, and this is really with three main aims in sight. So working out how we do things, so collecting guidance, methods, and good practice with designing the Bucks website, based on what we've learned from the last kind of 2 years of running the project, make it easier for everyone to understand how to create great user experiences online. So these are kind of an amalgamation of things like content templates, design methods, writing style guides, some of which we've had for a while and some of which we've been working on recently, just to round out the offering that we've got. So it creates a consistent starting point for anybody who's planning, designing or reviewing content. So output one was that comprehensive design system, and it comes down to lots of different things, writing for the content, what content templates we have and how we use them, what our pattern library is, and how to use them to create a consistent experience for our users so that we don't, every time you go to something, there isn't a different experience each time. So this is something that Laura's been working heavily on the last month or so, and we're pulling it together and we'll publish it fairly soon. So we have guidance around things like working with PDFs as well. Obviously, not always the greatest option for things like accessibility, but actually really useful for people to be able to publish long-form documents. We then have a number of how-to guidance for 8 content templates. So again, we're helping users to, oh, Laura has arrived. Hi, Laura.
Hello, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
A complete fail with getting Teams online and so on. So
I was doing my best Laura impression and kind of not doing that well, but I'm on to slide 2 if you wanted to take over. But
yep, okay. So as I'm sure Pete's covered, we developed a design system that's really all about making easier for anyone to think about planning and creating content. And these content templates are really about giving you a good starting point. So they're based on what we've learned already across this project. So the idea is that if you're thinking about content, you think about what you want that content to do. For example, if you want to help somebody apply for a private operator's license, you think I want to help them complete a single task, so I'll choose that content template. And then this guidance will tell you how that template works, what to include in it, and basically so you're not starting from a blank page, and hopefully will save everyone's time and make it easier to design content around user needs. So next slide, please. So the next output was a first iteration of guidance for 5 content patterns. So by content patterns, we mean consistent and repeated use of components, formatting, and page templates across the site for certain tasks and page types. So these are really useful for helping users recognize familiar patterns. So for example, when we're displaying contact information, we do it in a consistent way so users can easily recognize that information and read it no matter where it is on the site. So at the moment, we've collected 5 content patterns, as you can see here. So for displaying fees, telling users how to contact a service, displaying a timetable, displaying a timeline of events, and helping users contact a service using a form. So that's when your people contact the service for things like reporting a fault or reporting a repair, and they're linked into a form to do that. So we expect there will be more content patterns, and the team will iterate these as we start to use them. And hopefully they'll be really useful, again, as a starting point, so you're not starting from scratch every time you're doing these repeated things. Next slide, please, Pete. Sorry, next slide, please.
I'm on output number 4 at the moment.
Oh, sorry, this is something wrong with my computer. So output 4 is around this point around helping everyone to create and manage content. So within the design system resources, we've created this page which brings together some introduction to different methods you can use in content and service design. They're really simple introductions to things like pair writing, using user testing and user research. And each of these sections will take you through why you might use that, when you might use it, and some examples of methods of how to do that. So again, it's really useful for the web team to engage people across service areas in how they manage content, but also useful for anyone who's thinking about creating information from the site to sort of look at best practice or look at examples of how you might go about that.
Great, thank you very much, Laura. My Laura impression wasn't that great, really. So I'm glad that you came along. That's the end of the kind of real show and tell. I've got a couple of quick things that I want to quickly run through. We asked everybody who'd been working on the project at the end of 2021 to nominate a top 10 of things that we developed and delivered over the last kind of 2 years. So I just wanted to showcase quickly the ones that we put into the top 3 and some of the ones that didn't quite make it. So we've delivered a huge amount of stuff over the last couple of years. We've delivered a huge number of products and service types, which we've talked about at lots of our show and tells, and in fact, one of the ones that made it into the top 3, Laura's just mentioned as well. So some that didn't make the top 3, the campaign template, which is starting to be used in Anger now, which is really great. Family information service, which is a huge piece of work around about the turn of the year, 2020, 2021, which was brilliant, a great piece of work that was done by a combination of FutureGov and Unboxed and Torchbox and Scroll, and a number of people who actually contributed to it was huge. Postcode lookup tool, which for me was a real kind of great way of getting people to the right content. Content planning for planning and building control. Planning and building control we've talked about a lot because it was so huge, but that kind of content planning and the way that we approached that was a real exemplar for the way that services can redesign their content. The waste discovery work that's currently ongoing, which has been a quite lean approach, which is really powerful. Client transport user journeys, which have been interesting to deliver. Quite a complex and complicated journey in there, certainly touching on, as it does, on lots of different areas, whether it's admissions, SEND, various other things, and then the Bucks Online directory. But as voted by the team, the top 3, content pre-production site. So this is a way of us being able to preview content and show it to people in a way that makes sense for them. So we can send them a link to an actual kind of page, which they can comment on, review, click links in, rather than sending them PDFs or Word documents, which is traditionally how we used to do it. So it works in exactly the same way as the main site, but it allows designers to experiment with different ways to present content. You can share the links, allows teams to give feedback, and we use live links wherever possible. So this has been a real game changer for us. And there's an automated publication process from that content prep server to live server, which means that we can produce stuff in the content prep area, then automatically publish it straight to live. The number 2 was the design management system that Laura talked about, a really powerful tool for us, and that consistent starting point and making it easier for everyone to produce consistent, really great, really focused content. Number one was the step-by-step pattern. We haven't mentioned this for a couple of weeks, but it's been a really powerful way for us to present complex journeys and services, to bring together content from lots of multiple service areas, and potentially to have that interactions that span over a longer period of time. And when we're talking longer period of time, we may be talking months, years even, over a long process. And that arose out of a challenge where a service spans more than one service area. We've talked about this, particularly on that moving up to secondary school. This is where we've implemented our first of our step-by-step patterns. And actually what that's shown us is that we needed lots of different areas to coordinate, and actually using the step-by-step pattern was a really powerful way of demonstrating how we can produce those kind of integrated services, and we're, for that schools thing, we're trialing a new way of managing that service. So having a dedicated product specialist within the digital team to look after ongoing maintenance of the content, but also pushing that roadmap of recommendations going forward. And this for us is a different way of doing things. It's hopefully one that's going to work really well with services. It gives them a real single point of contact within the digital team for a journey which to a resident makes more sense. But from a service perspective has dipped in and out. So hopefully this will really help with us going forward. So that's the end of the show and tell. There is, however, one more thing. This show and tell is probably the last that we'll have lots of people from Unboxed with us. We've spent the last 2 years working closely with Unboxed and Torchbox and Scroll on delivering some really great content. They've supported us massively, they've educated us massively, and I think everybody in the digital team would like to say thank you to them. It's been a real pleasure working with them. Shame we couldn't continue to working, but all good things come to an end at some point. So I personally would like to say huge amount of thanks to too many people to individually mention: Rosanna, Caroline, Ali, Johnny, the list goes on. And sorry if I haven't mentioned Laura, sorry if I haven't mentioned anybody, but there are loads of people that have helped us over the last couple of years. So I thank you, a big kind of round of applause and a virtual tea cake from me. If we were all in an office somewhere together, we'd probably have a drink or two, but unfortunately we're not able to do that at the moment. But I'd just like to say thank you to those people who've helped us over the last couple of years. Yeah, the hand claps are going up there, and I think it's real. That's it from me. If anybody has any questions, either shout out or put them in the chat. Yeah, that's it. That's our first show and tell of 2022. I look forward to seeing you in 3 weeks' time, not 2 weeks. Show and tells are now every 3 weeks as we move into the kind of third phase of delivering buckinghamshire.gov.uk. Thank you very much, everybody.